Imagine you're the farmer who owns this field and you wanted to yield a rich crop to surrender one. Obviously, there are certain things that you as the farmer need to do first. You need to plow the field, you need to plant the seeds. The teacher in this passage is somewhat unconsciously assuming that everything that applies to the realm of cultivating a field and yielding a rich crop also applies to the process of teaching Tom. Chance York's debut record, Fed and Famished, has a song on it called Learn, the lyrics of which explore this very process, whereby we find ourselves unconsciously living by metaphors. So what if we chose to live in terms of richer metaphors, like the apple surrendering tree, like the egg, which is broken by a force from within, and like the field, which is beyond our ideas about right doing and wrong doing. I release this vision and intention to the field and invite you to engage. The fundamental purpose of emotions for all mammals, whether you're a human, whether you're deer, is to initiate movement that will restore the organism to safety and physical equilibrium. Yesterday we thought about the amygdala as the smoke detector of the brain. If the amygdala senses a threat, it sends one of those instant messages, recruiting the stress hormone system and the autonomic nervous system. Bessel shares that there are two branches to the autonomic nervous system: the sympathetic, which acts as the body's accelerator, and the parasympathetic, which serves as its brake. Whenever you take a deep breath, you activate the sympathetic nervous system, the with emotions nervous system. The resulting burst of adrenaline speeds up your heart, which explains why many athletes take a few short, deep breaths before starting competition. Exhaling, in turn, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which slows down the heart. Looking forward to talking about Wim Hof soon. Is the mind its own place, we asked? Perhaps more like a walled garden than an open field. Countering the idea that the mind is its own place, we discovered the brain to be peopled by a motley crew, from a cook to a timekeeper and a smoke detector, which is hypersensitive to external things. But we also encountered the potential of cultivating an inner relationship between parts of the brain, specifically the smoke detector and the watchtower. Some of the patterns in which we get stuck, there's no way of getting unstuck from unless the relationship between the smoke detector and the watchtower is cultivated. And we can't do that with the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which does the planning. We can do that through things like the Wim Hof method, working on the relationship between the left and the right hemisphere of the brain through certain energy-conscious physical movements. The idea here is that with enough practice and repetition, any behavior, good or bad, becomes automatic over time. Once we've unlearned habits that demonstrably weren't serving us, then we can cultivate new habits. There is, I think, a risk that this idea of eliminating bad habits can lead to some oppressive application of plows and harrows to uproot certain aspects of oneself.
All other methods of education are mere charlatanism and will produce nothing better than spatterers.
Is our consciousness a field that needs to be broken up into furrows for planting? And do the clods of soil left after ploughing need to be further broken up by harrows? The more observant among you may have noticed that the into the field is not one that gets ploughed and harrowed. Amongst other things, it produces hay. It's a cycle involving a field that doesn't involve any ploughing or harrowing. It's a cycle that does involve repetition and full awareness of the reality of time. For Damasio, the amygdala is one of a number of brain structures that will become active when they detect a certain configuration. Note the same detector metaphor, but it's more subtle here. For the most part, Damasio is avoiding metaphor. The amygdala is just the amygdala. One of the things that the amygdala does is detect emotionally competent stimuli that are of relevance to my survival. Now, speaking of metaphors, this week we've been thinking of this table as the war table, an acronym for We Are Right. And I've been stressing yesterday that we want to be on guard against making being at the war table wrong. Damasio is interested in the relationship between different aspects of automated homeostatic regulation. The image for the ensemble of these reactions is not that of a simple linear hierarchy. A better image is that of a tree, with progressively higher and more elaborate branches. And this is where feelings come in. feelings, the treetops of life regulation. Today we start exploring higher creativity, bearing in mind that for Antonio Damasio, it's precisely when feelings come into play that there is a possibility of creating novel, non-stereotypical responses. One level of complexity below feelings, in terms of levels of homeostatic regulation, we have emotions, which enabled organisms to respond effectively but not creatively to a number of circumstances, conducive or threatening to life. We're going to take that very seriously today and next Sunday, using these two books to give creativity its place in our holistic picture. And my parents are going to be joining us on this journey. On the one hand, they're ideal candidates. On the other, I feel they might be somewhat resistant to a spiritual path to higher creativity. Let's see.
Yeah, getting so mentally prepared for the onslaught we're going to get.
Did you know about the mushroom circle over there?
As we've learned this week, Lynn believes in magic, and what's more, she's of the opinion that the Into the field is a magical field.
It's definitely a magic field.
In part 3, she'll take me and John on a journey to discover quite how, and I'll quiz him a little bit more about magic and nature in light of that.
I'm not sure I'm convinced yet that it's magic.
And finally, in part 4, a new assistant will help me as I give an overview of my favourite section, the section on trust from Big Magic. What is natural? What is magic?
I know. What's the difference? Where's the divide?
It's supposed to be impossible, isn't it?
Depends what you're...
Well,
It's definitely not impossible.
no.
It's happening all the time.
That's pretty magic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Well, except that we do understand the science of it, and therefore it's not magical at all. But it's fantastic.
We have to talk about the definition of magic eventually, don't we? We're just talking about nature.
Yeah.
What do you think creativity is?